It starts quietly, almost harmless, on a humid night in early April 1944, somewhere deep in the Burmese jungle, where the air feels heavy and the darkness presses in from every direction. Japanese soldiers of the Imperial Army's 15th Army are crouched along a muddy ridgeline, listening to sounds that do not make sense. Engines seem to start and stop without warning. Footsteps echo, then vanish. Radios crackle, then fall silent. To many of these men, hardened by years of war in China and Southeast Asia, it feels like a bad joke. Some even laugh. They believe the enemy is trying to scare them with tricks. They mock it quietly, convinced there is nothing real out there. What they do not know, and what they will learn too late, is that this illusion is not meant to frighten them. It is meant to guide them. And once they follow it, the jungle itself will become a weapon. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. By 1944, the Japanese Imperial Army had been fighting almost without pause for more than a decade. From the plains of China to the islands of the Pacific, their soldiers had developed a strong belief in endurance, discipline, and the idea that spirit could defeat machines. Many Japanese officers openly looked down on Allied deception tactics. They believed real soldiers did not hide behind tricks. To them, fake tanks, false radio signals, and staged movements were signs of weakness. This mindset would shape their reaction when they first encountered what Allied troops casually called the Ghost Army in the jungles of Burma. The term Ghost Army was not an official unit name in the Pacific the way it later became famous in Europe. Instead, it was a nickname Allied soldiers used for a collection of deception tactics, small specialized units, and intelligence teams that created the illusion of large forces where none existed. In Burma and India, these methods were used by the British 14th Army under General William Slim, supported by American units like OSS Detachment 101 and British deception planners attached to Southeast Asia Command. Their goal was simple but dangerous: confuse Japanese commanders, pull enemy divisions into the wrong areas, and stretch their supply lines until they snapped. In early 1944, Lieutenant General Renya Mutaguchi, commander of the Japanese 15th Army, launched Operation U-Go. His plan was bold and reckless. He intended to invade British India by pushing through the mountain passes toward Imphal and Kohima. Mutaguchi believed that a decisive victory would break British control in India and inspire rebellion. His troops were ordered to advance quickly, live off the land, and crush Allied forces before they could react. Many Japanese staff officers quietly doubted the plan, but orders were orders. By March, tens of thousands of Japanese soldiers were moving through some of the hardest terrain in the world. The British knew the attack was coming. Signals intelligence, long-range patrols, and local intelligence networks had given them enough warning. But they also knew they could not stop the Japanese everywhere at once. They needed time to fly in supplies, reinforce positions, and prepare defensive strongpoints. This was where deception became critical. In late March 1944, Allied planners began a coordinated deception effort across northern Burma and eastern India. Fake camps were built in clearings visible from the air. Dummy supply dumps were arranged with empty crates and barrels. Radio operators sent carefully scripted messages that suggested entire divisions were moving to sectors where in reality only a few patrols existed. Trucks were driven in circles at night to raise dust and noise. Engineers used sound equipment to play recorded noises of troop movements and vehicle columns. To Allied soldiers, it was a practical trick. To Japanese observers, it looked strange, clumsy, and unconvincing. Japanese reconnaissance patrols reported these activities up the chain of command. Some junior officers warned that the enemy might be trying to mislead them, but many senior officers dismissed the reports. They believed the British lacked the will for complex operations. The idea that a fake army could shape the battlefield seemed absurd to them. In Japanese military culture at the time, deception was respected at the tactical level, but distrusted when it appeared theatrical. Inflatable equipment, stage noise, and false radio chatter felt like circus acts, not warfare. By early April, elements of the Japanese 33rd Division and 15th Division were advancing toward Imphal. The jungle grew thicker, the paths narrower. Supply lines stretched back for miles through terrain that allowed no vehicles. Every bag of rice, every shell, had to be carried by hand. This made Japanese units extremely sensitive to the threat of large Allied forces appearing unexpectedly on their flanks. When reports came in of heavy Allied movement to the south and west, Mutaguchi's staff took notice, but not seriously enough. Around April 5, 1944, Japanese soldiers near the Chinduin River began hearing sounds at night. They described engines, metal clanking, and shouted commands, all carried strangely through the jungle. Patrols sent out to investigate found nothing. No tracks, no camps, no discarded equipment. The soldiers returned confused. Some laughed it off, calling it jungle spirits or enemy tricks. Others felt uneasy. The mocking tone spread because fear was not acceptable. Laughing was safer than admitting uncertainty. What the Japanese soldiers did not realize was that they were being gently pushed. Allied deception teams were not trying to convince them of a massive force everywhere. They were shaping expectations. The fake movement suggested that British units were shifting south, away from Imphal. This encouraged Japanese commanders to press forward faster, believing they had caught the enemy off balance. At the same time, real Allied units were digging in around Imphal and Kohima. Airfields were reinforced, artillery positions were registered, supply plans were finalized to rely almost entirely on airdrops, something the Japanese had never fully prepared to counter. General Slim's strategy was not to meet the Japanese in the open jungle, but to let them come, exhaust themselves, and then crush them where air power and logistics could be used. The deception reached its peak between April 10th and April 15th. Radio traffic increased sharply in sectors where there were almost no Allied troops. Japanese signals officers intercepted messages that seemed sloppy and obvious. To them, it looked like the British were careless or desperate. Some officers joked that the enemy wanted to be found. This only reinforced the belief that the illusion was weak. On April 16th, a Japanese battalion moving through a narrow valley reported seeing lights at night on a distant ridge. The lights moved in patterns that looked like vehicle columns. The battalion commander reported this as possible enemy movement, but added his personal assessment that it was likely a bluff. Higher command agreed. The unit was ordered to continue its advance without delay. That decision would have consequences within days. On April 18, 1944, near the village of Tidham Road approaches, Japanese troops advanced into what they believed was a lightly held area. The Ghost Army illusion had done its work. The Japanese expected scattered resistance at most. Instead, as they moved into range, Allied artillery opened fire with precision. Well-prepared defensive positions came alive. Machine guns, mortars, and coordinated airstrikes tore into the advancing columns. The shock was immediate and brutal. Japanese soldiers who had mocked the idea of a hidden enemy now found themselves pinned down by forces they did not believe were there. Communication lines broke down. Officers struggled to understand how entire units had appeared overnight. In reality, they had been there for weeks, silent and concealed. While the deception drew attention elsewhere, the illusion had become deadly. As the battle for Imphal intensified through late April and May, Japanese casualties mounted rapidly. Supply shortages became severe. Starving soldiers continued to attack well-supplied Allied positions, convinced by doctrine and orders that retreat was dishonourable. The Ghost Army tactics did not kill Japanese soldiers directly, but they placed them exactly where Allied firepower could. Similar patterns appeared at Kohima, where Japanese forces were lured into attacking heavily fortified ridges. Deceptive radio traffic and visible dummy positions convinced Japanese commanders that Allied strength was spread thin. In reality, key defensive points were reinforced and ready. One of the most important aspects of the deception was psychological. Japanese soldiers began to doubt their own senses. Sounds meant nothing. Sight could not be trusted. Every movement in the jungle might be real or fake. This uncertainty slowed decision-making and increased stress. In a military culture that valued clarity and resolve, this was devastating. By June 1944, Operation U-Go had collapsed. The Japanese 15th Army suffered catastrophic losses. Tens of thousands of soldiers died, many from starvation and disease. Lieutenant General Mutaguchi was relieved of command later that year. The defeat at Imphal and Kohima marked a turning point in the Burma Campaign. Among Allied troops, the success of deception was quietly acknowledged. There was no single unit to celebrate, no parade of fake equipment. The Ghost Army in Burma remained mostly invisible, known only to planners and intelligence officers. But its impact was undeniable. Japanese post-war accounts reveal how deeply unsettling the experience was. Veterans wrote about hearing armies that were not there and attacking positions that seemed to appear from nothing. Some admitted that they had underestimated the enemy's ability to think creatively. Others remained bitter, insisting that honour should not be defeated by illusion. But history showed otherwise. The story of Japanese soldiers mocking the Ghost Army is not about foolishness or arrogance alone. It is about how deeply held beliefs can become blind spots. The Japanese army believed war was decided by spirit and sacrifice. The Allies believed war was also about information, misdirection, and control of perception. In the jungles of Burma in 1944, those ideas collided. The illusion did not win the war by itself. Real soldiers fought and died. Real guns fired. Real planes dropped bombs and supplies. But the illusion shaped where and when those forces met. It turned confidence into confusion and mockery into shock. When Japanese soldiers laughed at the strange sounds in the jungle, they were not laughing at ghosts. They were laughing at a future they did not yet understand. And by the time the truth revealed itself, it was already too late. The jungle, silent once more after the battles ended, held the memory of an army that was never meant to be seen, only felt. An army that proved that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is not the one you can see, but the one that guides you exactly where your enemy wants you to go. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.